welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Hello, and welcome to the Skeptic Zone, episode 330 for the 15th of February 2015. This is Jo Alabaster here from the beautiful Blue Mountains in Australia, filling in for Richard Saunders, who's been busy this week updating the Skeptic Zone website. The new design is going live as this episode goes to air, so go and have a look. www.skepticzone.tv. Coming up on this week's show, Maynard's spooky action. This week, Maynard chats with Dr Brad McKay from Embarrassing Bodies Down Under, who gave a talk at Sydney Skeptics in the pub. What is his take, as a GP, on some of the more popular forms of so-called alternative medicines? We also find out what a group of pharmacists who are in the audience think of woo in Chemist Shops, and Eran Segev gives his thoughts on the retirement of James Randi. After that, Richard chats to Dr Steve Roberts, also known as Dr Bob of Dr Bob's Trivia Quiz, and asks, where have all the UFOs gone? Following that, it's the popular segment, A Week in Science from RiAus. And finally, it's Evidence Please with me. My report this week includes something of a book review of Stephanie Messenger's Melanie's Marvellous Measles. Well, it's time for me to run downstairs and into my back garden, as I live in a single-storey house on a mountain. Perhaps I'll sit on the lawn and have a picnic. While I'm doing that, please enjoy the Skeptic Zone.
Here's Maynard's spooky action at a distance.
We've just been listening to Dr. Brad do his talk. I had to call you Doogie Howser when I heard that you went to uni at 16.
I started university when I was 16, yeah. So it is a very aged reference, Maynard.
Oh, yeah, I know. Because
people know who Doogie
I
Howser
think
is.
3 people went, oh, and the other people went, shut up, Maynard.
There was a lot of reflection and understanding from three members of the audience.
Look, so you had fantastic marks in high school. Was that part of the reason? And you had a real aptitude?
Yeah. I studied very hard and I spent a lot of time in my bedroom looking at books and reading. So,
look, and much better than the books that I was looking at, obviously. I think, look, but Dr. Brad, I've had people on Twitter already saying I had to interview because people were fascinated about what you were doing there. You were giving us some case studies where people have offered alternative medicine to the regular medicine. But frankly, everything you put up on the screen, I think could have been either fixed with a prescription of dexamphetamine or MDMA.
Well, it's
depression, MDA, bang. I'm feeling a bit sluggish. Dexamphetamine. I'm no doctor, but, you know.
There are a lot of vague symptoms that people have, and people struggle with low mood or with low energy levels or different skin conditions. And so a lot of people are trying to find answers, and they haven't found it in the regular medical circles. So they will often look at other alternative therapies because they haven't got their answers from what they're wanting. My principle is to listen to people and to understand, really get to the bottom of what's going on, and often we'll find a problem and be able to fix it. So,
and this is one of the respect I have for GPs, is because you are at the front line of this. And one of the examples you gave was that you just come back from holidays. A woman came in with thyroid issues, and she asked you, how is thyroxine made? What is the background to it? And you've got a, 6-minute, 15-minute, and you've got to give out this information, and that's very difficult for you. It's like you've got to be a walking instant encyclopedia.
Yeah, and as a GP, your knowledge is very broad, and so you need to know a lot about a whole lot of different things. So one of my interest areas has really been looking at alternative therapies and what is it, and what's the quality of it, what are the studies behind it. So I probably have more of an interest in it than other people and can give more of an opinion. And when people ask me questions like, how is thyroxine made? I'm like going, oh, crap, I don't know. So if you're looking it up and researching, then you can know the answers to it, and then it gets stored. But yeah, it's sort of having that constant looking and reading and being up to date with everything.
What sort of success rate do you have with weaning people off non-evidence-based medicine?
I think it's very difficult. I think if people are getting a benefit or a perceived benefit, it's very difficult to tell them that they're not getting a benefit from it or that it's only placebo because they've got a belief or a faith in what's going on. Or they may be getting a mild benefit, or it might work for them but not the next person as well. And so it's quite a complex situation. So I think it's worthwhile taking people at face value and saying, okay, well, what's going on? If you're trying this then, and you're feeling that it's got this benefit, then let's try off it for a couple of weeks and see how you feel. Then we'll try you back on it again. Let's try something different and try to prove or disprove what's working and what's not working.
Look, for our listeners playing along at home, could you give them just one of the examples that you throw up on the screen then? Just tell us what it is and what you did. Is there one you'd like to tell us now?
Well, my favourite is cupping.
Which I thought was like spooning. I thought, great, it's like going to be a cuddling thing here, but no, not at all.
So, a lot of people find that they're not getting anywhere with their treatment if they've got low back pain or upper thoracic back pain or whatever's going on. If they've got a cold, then people will often offer to do cupping, which is basically sticking cups to your skin and either using suction or heat to suck up your skin up into the cup, or a large version of getting a nasty hickey when you're 14. Yeah. So by getting a hickey on your back, that is apparently beneficial in getting rid of colds, getting rid of your fever, getting rid of toxins from your skin. If you're basically sucking on your skin, you'll get a mouthful of sweat if you're sucking on it directly. If you've got a cup, then you might get some sweat, or you'll just be breaking blood vessels and creating a lot of bruising. So, and that's what I get horrified with when people have decorative bruising all over their back for not any benefit.
Is this a little bit like a distraction like acupuncture is? Like the actual act of doing this will distract people from what symptoms they have as an issue?
Well, a lot of people talk about acupuncture or cupping or any other modality and think, well, if they're lying down and they can't move because they've got needles in them or they've got cups sucking their skin up on their back, then they have to just lie there and not think about things and relax, which a lot of people don't do these days. So is it more that there's a benefit from meditating, or that there's a benefit from lying there still and just quietening down for the day? Is that what's doing the benefit, or is it because they're getting a whole lot of hickeys on their back?
Look, cupping, you're getting close to bloodletting and you're getting close to leeches.
Well, sometimes you actually get bloodletting from cupping. You can get blisters and you can get a serious lot of blood coming out. You can get infections as well. You get infections from acupuncture too if the needles aren't being appropriately used. So yeah, there's a lot of dangers that can be had from both treatments.
And as a GP, you mentioned a case there where someone came in and they wanted to have their cortisol level in their blood measured. Is that something that a doctor would do when people come in and they want a specific test for some reason? Do you want to go into what they're all on about and everything, because it could have a detrimental effect finding out that, couldn't it?
So people will often come in and say that they have adrenal fatigue, in inverted commas, and they've been told that by their naturopath. And so as GPs and as medicos, it's hard to understand what that actually is, because
it's a little bit like strengthening the immune system. It's a bit meaningless.
How do you measure that? What's going on? So they'll often be told by their naturopath to have a reading of their cortisol to see what's going on. And so it's often very difficult, because you can look at them and go, yeah, I don't think you've got Cushing's disease, which will be an excess of cortisol. You may be stressed because it's a stress hormone. So if we check your cortisol level and it's up, what does that mean? Does that mean that you're stressed?
And I guess you don't always have a base level for that particular person either, do you?
You often don't have a base level, and you often need to repeat it a number of times to see if it's a true reading or not. But again, you often have a variety of different symptoms that are there. So with Cushing's disease, people are often very overweight, they've got very thin skin, they've got a moon face because they've got a lot of swelling around their cheeks and around their face, they've got high blood pressure. There's a whole range of different symptoms that they've got if they've got Cushing's disease and if they've got a high lot of cortisol that's going around their body, and it's a really serious condition. So and if you've got the other way, if you're not having enough cortisol, then you end up having Addison's disease, where, it's a very, very important issue, and there's a whole lot of endocrinological problems that go along with it that you need specialist treatment for with Addison's disease. But it's also very, very rare, and usually these people would be feeling a lot worse than what they are, coming in saying that they're stressed or that they've got adrenal fatigue as a diagnosis, because it's not a diagnosis.
Which is why you went to medical school, because a single data point like your cortisol reading is not going to give you the entire story.
No, not at all. No. And often people will want to have that number so they can go back to their naturopath, and then their naturopath might go, oh, yes, of course, it's a little bit up. So you've got, you're stressed, or it's a little bit low, and of course you've got adrenal fatigue because you've got really low levels. So it's yeah.
Look, you've got a long queue of people who want to see you here and perhaps get some free medical advice, but if Dr. Brad could magically knock out one non-evidence-based modality, what would it be? What would be the one you go, that's it, it's gone from this planet? What would the one be? Only one. Only one.
Only one? Only one?
One non-evidence-based, it's out of there.
No, well, look, cupping is my most hated thing. It's something that freaks me out, and even as a GP, I'm used to seeing a lot of gross things, but it still gets a little bit of anxiety whenever I see anybody with cupping. So I think just for purely selfish reasons, then cupping would be it.
And look, have you got a website or something where you've got this kind of information, or is there anywhere you'd like to point us to on the web?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Dr Brad McKay, and I'm on Facebook as well, and I've got my website, which is www.drbradmckay.com.au.
Look, and thank you for an excellent talk. We're very illuminating, and you made us go, yeah, it was great.
I'm glad that you're very illuminated.
And you used the word pus.
And you used the word doogie.
Thank you. Thank you. And as we all know, pharmacists are almost completely no use unless you've got a blank prescription pad. Really? Has anyone got a blank prescription pad? No. So, initially, I'm not interested in talking to you, but we've got to ask some stuff about what you thought about Dr. Brad up there. What did you think of him and his non-evidence-based modality poo-poo?
Well, this is my first Skeptics meeting.
A lot of beards here, hey?
A lot of beer. Yeah, there's lots of beer, but that's a good thing.
Beards.
Oh, beards. Yeah, okay. You're funny. Anyway, what I was going to say is that he gave a really good talk. A lot of the stuff that he had seen in his GP practice, like as pharmacists, we've seen as well. Possibly we were put more on the spot because you're right there and the drugs are there, and it's like, all right, so my physio said this or my doctor said this. What are you going to say? What are you going to give?
So if someone landed in the pharmacy and said, how is thyroxine made? That's a pretty wild question to come out of the blue, isn't it?
Not so wild, because through our degrees we do to some extent learn about how drugs are manufactured, especially drugs that are like sort of hormone in nature. We do know where they're extracted from and that sort of thing.
But when someone asks that, it's a loaded question when they ask that. Yeah.
It is, and sort of asking for the natural equivalence is not always the easiest thing to do, definitely not. So it like you said, loaded question.
And I did ask Dr. Brad this, and you probably got an answer to this. If there was one non-evidence-based modality that you could get rid of, ban it from the planet, what would be the one that you would get rid of?
Well, honestly, because I've done a little bit of research in it, a lot of girls take evening primrose oil for period pain, but there's no evidence to back it up. The only thing it actually does have a little bit of evidence for is a little bit of skin-like irritation and a little bit of breast tenderness. But in terms of period pain in general or PMS symptoms, it does nothing. And a lot of girls, I even have cousins abroad who ask me to buy some for them from Australia because you can't get it in certain parts of the world, and I just think that's a load of unevidence-based stuff.
and what are the side effects of taking a large amount of it? Is there anything like you get with St. John's wort or that sort of thing?
It's not like those risky side effects like St. John's wort, because St. John's wort can cause actual clinical side effects such as serotonin syndrome, which can be fatal. With evening primrose oil, I'm not going to say I know 100%, but you would have to take a much larger quantity for it to have those kind of lethal or detrimental side effects. But I'm always from the viewpoint that the less medicines you take, even if they're evidence-based, the better. If you don't need it, don't take it. If it's not going to work, don't take it. So why put something in your body for no reason?
Thank you. I've got your friend over here, fellow colleague here, a fellow pharmacist. How many years have you been a pharmacist?
4 years almost. Yeah.
Me.
Yeah, I know, longer than you. So.
And what did you make of Dr. Brad's talk?
Yeah, it was really interesting. It's interesting always to hear things from a medical perspective as opposed to a pharmacist perspective, because we think a lot more about the drugs as opposed to the diagnostics, because the medical field they're all about diagnostics, we're all about the drugs.
And when you have been in a pharmacy and you've had people coming in with the loaded questions, and basically the question they're asking really is, I want to find some way to blame Big Pharma for what's going wrong with me, or avoid taking medicine because I'm suspicious of Big Pharma. How do you handle that in the very short interaction you've got with them?
Yeah. being a long-term skeptic since before I'd registered, I probably have a little bit more experience in this. Personally, I sort of asked them why have they come in wanting quote-unquote natural therapy. And being someone who used to be into woo, I completely understand it.
What was your woo? Come on. I reckon maybe astrology, a touch of cupping, a bit of spooning.
I do like a bit of spooning to this day. But, yes, I was definitely into... When I was like a kid, I loved horoscopes. And, I really got into...
I'm a Capricorn like Paul McCartney.
All the Wiccan magic and black magic.
Well, you're
going to
have a great year.
But, having said that, I understand where people are coming from. So, generally speaking, I'll ask them, look, where are you coming from? Why are you wanting this? And understanding that medications are quite scary. So, trying to very quickly understand what it is about the medication that they've been prescribed or the illness that they've been diagnosed with that is scaring them or making them feel uncomfortable, and trying to reconcile that very quickly. So, with the depression thing that Dr. Brad put up, I thought a lot of people come in that I want to be depressed. It's got a lot of stigma behind it. So just tell them, look, it's just a mismatch it's an imbalance. It's not your fault, because a lot of people feel self-blame for it. And trying to rectify that and tell them, look, you've got to take a medication that can either work short term or it can work long. You need to be on it long term, and there's nothing to be embarrassed about. And telling them I've been through the same thing, or my friend's been through the same thing, or lots of patients are on it, and normalising the situation for them and normalising taking medications which they genuinely need. If they don't genuinely need it, and there could be something where they could get a better response from a non-pharmacological therapy such as CBT or cognitive behavioural therapy, or from physio, exercise, diet, that sort of thing. If you really want to do this, let's give it a time frame. Let's tell our doctor that we're doing it and come back to me, and if it's not working, then we'll move forward onto the sort of quote-unquote more hardcore stuff. When they come in, if they're for breastfeeding and things like that, and they want, things to supplement their breastfeeding, and I tell them, look, with a herb, I don't even know how much it is in there. We haven't done the tests. We don't know what else is in there. With homeopathy, I explain to them, I ask them, do you know what homeopathy is? Oh, it's natural. And I'm like, well, do you know how homeopathy is made? And I'm like, you can look it up. You can buy it today. It works for me because I get more money for the store, but I don't want you to buy it for X, Y, and Z. So I sort of, rather than telling them that they're stupid or whatever, being like, oh no, I don't want to sell you that, I tell them, look, from my standpoint, I'd rather you be safe, and I wouldn't recommend it to you for X, Y, and Z. Why is it in the store then? Well, I don't own the store. Unfortunately, the government isn't paying us enough money, and we've got to sell ourselves and literally prostitute ourselves. So, yeah, that's pretty much it.
And if you had to ban one non-evidence-based modality from the face of this planet, which one would it be for you? Which one would you get rid of?
Probably anything, probably homeopathy. Probably a homeopathy or kinesiology, because they spurt a lot of bullshit in their clinics.
Okay, well, I'll get working on that one straight away. And look, shout out, everyone out there who's ever bought anything on the black milk label will know that those pants you are wearing are fantastic black milk pants. Every girl who knows what I'm talking about.
Hell yeah leggings, hell yeah leggings.
Free pair for that.
Absolutely, I'll put them on it.
Yeah, because everyone knows that all the fashion people listen to the Skeptic Zone. And speaking of skeptics, we've got Eran here.
Well, we have to have Richard take a photo of these pants and make them the logo for this week's show.
Actually, you could make them background art, couldn't you? Just take one section of them, make them. But now, now, with James Randi retiring, which means he's no longer going to be a skeptic. He's going to be selling crystals on Home Shopping Channel or something. He's getting right out of skepticism. What do you think? Do you think there needs to be a figure like that, or do you think it's more organic now? We can do without that kind of figure.
I don't think we need Randi or somebody like him necessarily. I think there's what Randi did was he popularized certain things. Randi is a performer, and because of his popularity as a performer, because of his showmanship, his ability to speak to a large audience, he's been particularly useful to the skeptical movement. I do not think that his leadership necessarily, or the JREF in particular, have been groundbreaking. It was not the first organization. It was not. I don't think it's an organization that necessarily leads from a skeptical perspective. What it's done really well, and a lot of it is because of Randi's popularity and personal abilities, he's been able to popularize skepticism. I think nowadays it's needed a lot less for the very simple reason that it's a big movement nowadays. Communication's a lot easier than it was in the 70s and in the 80s when Randi started working on this. I don't think we need a leader. Leaders also have a leader like Randi. There's also issues with having somebody like that because, for example, they have frailties, And I'm not talking about the physical frailties of, Randi as an 86-year-old man. I'm talking about the fact that he sometimes gets it wrong. There's all kinds of issues. People can have a debate about Randi's morality in certain situations. It doesn't matter whether I agree with him or not. The thing is, the focus on one person means that the skeptical movement as a movement is probably weakened. So I think I don't think we need Randi. I think look, he's done an amazing job, and I feel fortunate to have met him many times and to have spoken to him. But I don't think the movement needs him anymore.
The Skeptic Zone is brought to you by Dr. Bob's Trivia Quiz. Visit drbobsquiz.wordpress.com and see if you can match wits with Dr. Bob.
And I'm joined again by the well-travelled and well-read Dr. Steve Roberts, who's a long-time skeptic here in Australia. He's also the man behind Dr. Bob's Trivia Quiz. But Steve, you have a very long interest in skeptical matters, specifically about UFOs, amongst other things.
Yeah, I wonder what you're going to say there, very long, proboscis or something. Yeah,
right.
Look, I came into the skeptics through UFOs. I mean, when I was a kid, I thought something was going on with UFOs.
Yeah, so did I.
I had a respect for books which had been physically dinned into me at school.
Yeah.
But kids in those days, in the 1960s, thought that if something was in a book, it was true.
Well, from my point of view, kids in the 1970s, when it was on TV.
It was on TV.
All these reports, and we thought it was true as well. Yeah.
That's how Ronald Reagan used to think. I said, yes, I know, I saw it on television. And unfortunately, some of the UFO nuts got so rich from writing in books that they actually were able to found their own publishing house and print their own books. So there's some really bizarre books out there. And it wasn't until I actually began to, with other people at uni, and many of them quite smart, we began to actually get hold of the evidence and try to collate it and see if there's something going on. And there actually wasn't much evidence. That was the first thing.
Yeah, lots of stories and lots of reports.
The whole of British sightings for 6 years, every sighting in Britain was about a 1 centimetre pile of paper, including all the fuzzy ones.
Yeah.
90% of them were just very fuzzy. Yeah. No hoaxes in those days.
Right.
And some, look kind of interesting, but there's always a lack of evidence when you come to those, and you wonder what did go on, but then you've got to think, well, if aliens did land in a cornfield somewhere, there'd be some footprints or
well, that's it, isn't
radiation, or somebody else would have seen it. And
after all this time, even... Well, they said in Roswell, the aliens crashed. Okay, so they can make mistakes.
Yeah.
Surely a few more. If all the UFO reports are real, that a few more would have made mistakes. That's a bit of a straw man, I guess. But there should be something.
Well, not only can the aliens make mistakes and crash the damn thing, but the US government can make mistakes and fail to keep secrets under control, like the Iran Gate, the Watergate scandal, the Iran-Contra scandal, Bill Clinton shenanigans, and numerous things.
It's hard to keep secrets.
Very hard to keep secret, yeah.
Surely that man, what's his name, Snowden, would have released the naughty UFO files by now.
Oh, there'd be, I mean, against whom is it secret? If the Americans have a better tank, they need to keep that secret from the Russians in the age of the Cold War. But if a flying saucer lands, doesn't that belong to the whole of humanity? And the people involved would think that. Would think, well, why are we keeping this away from other friendly nations? Even?
Yeah, well, you must be on their payroll. That's all I can say.
I'm sorry. I have to kill you. So.
I was told just 2 days ago on Twitter that I'm on the payroll of the big pharmaceutical companies.
Yeah.
I went to the letterbox today. No check again.
No check. Yeah, I wish they.
They would hurry up.
I wish my payments would hurry up. Yeah.
So, what's the state of the modern UFO scene? Is there one?
Not really. It failed with the introduction of mobile phones, especially mobile phones with cameras in them. There was actually an advert for a mobile phone in 93 when they first came in. They were the size of a brick in those days. There was an advert by Telstra showing a guy who'd seen a UFO, land right in front of him, and the advert said, "Quick, phone somebody." And if you don't have a phone in your pocket as you're out there in the field, you can't phone anybody. There were no such phone calls that came in. And then, of course, with cameras, everybody has a camera now.
Well, not only that, when we say everybody, for many people have not only a camera about their person, but a high-definition video camera. I've got my phone has a high definition video camera just built right in.
Well, it seems to have killed the UFO stories right off.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, because if they were buzzing around with thousands upon thousands of people in Australia and millions across the United States and other countries all carrying at least a camera, we should be overwhelmed with spaceship photographs.
What we get now is orbs.
Orbs.
Orbs. Yeah, if you take a photograph in some dusty place with dust motes in the air and the flash goes off. And the thing is, when you're behind the camera looking through it, you can't see the flash go off. A lot of people insist there was no flash, but actually you can tell from the JPEG file that there was a flash fired.
That's interesting.
And it picks up dust motes, about 2 inches in front of the lens. They come out fuzzy and say, "Ooh, look, orbs."
Look, an orb.
Then really, with a bit of sense, if you're with other people, you have to explain, well, did anybody else see the orbs? Because you actually can't see them.
You can't see them.
Artifact of the flash and the dust.
Of course,
Yeah, but nobody else saw the orbs. But the people think, "Oh, I've been visited by orbs. I'm favoured," which is a wonderful feeling to have.
Normally, they're associated. People think they're spirits of some kind.
Well, if it gives you a warm, fuzzy feeling, that's very nice.
Yeah, but we know what they are.
Look, it's a shame sometimes. I've stopped debunking UFO stories in the latter days of the phenomenon because you're ruining people's self-esteem and
I suppose
spoiling people's fun.
It's flogging a dead horse a bit, isn't it?
It is, that's
as
right.
we said, the evidence is simply not there, which it should be.
And people come to you and say, "I've seen a UFO," which makes me very special, and then you explain it. That's the last thing they want. Think of the Monty Python sketch of the ex-leper. He explained my sighting. No, I was a UFO contactee. Now I'm just nobody. It's the last thing they want.
Well, we'll keep watching the skies in the meantime, Steve. Thanks again for dropping by. And people can Google Dr. Bob's Trivia Quiz and take part in your quiz.
If they're game enough, yes, indeed. They'll be abducted by a UFO as first prize. Ooh. And probed. No, we don't go there.
Welcome to A Week in Science from RiAus, bringing you the science you need to know. Trying to woo someone this Valentine's Day? Maybe you could take a leaf out of the animal kingdom and try some of these romantic displays. To attract a female, the male of many penguin species will build a nest out of pebbles before standing by it, puffing up their chest, lifting their head towards the sky, and making honking sounds while outstretching their wings. This is not a good idea for humans. Do not stand outside your house shouting at people. It won't work. This one is a bit nasty. Before mating, a male porcupine will drench the female in his own urine. If she is ready for copulation, she will not object to this display, whereas any other response is a sure sign she's not ready. No, do not do this. Let's try under the sea. After all, seahorses are quite the romantics. A typical male courtship display can last up to 8 hours. Seahorse couples also swim with their tails intertwined, almost like holding hands. When it comes to pregnancy, the male takes on the female egg, fertilises it and nourishes it, carrying the offspring for 6 weeks. But sorry ladies, human males can't get pregnant, so this one is also off the cards. The females of the very deep sea anglerfish are much larger than their male counterparts, which you think might be awkward when it comes to mating. The male instead finds a female and permanently attaches his mouth to her, taking on nutrients through the female's body. Okay, so maybe none of these are particularly good courtship tips for the human world, but here are 4 more fast facts about romance in the animal kingdom. The male bowerbird creates a display of brightly coloured objects which is then judged by a female. Good interior design skills leads to a mate. Adelaide Zoo orangutans Carter and Cluet visibly grieved the loss of an infant, with male Cluet providing support and comfort to Carter. Like many birds, the waved albatross performs an elaborate courtship dance. However, theirs is performed with their partner. But the strawberry dart frog has a very different system for choosing a mate. The female just takes whichever male is closest. That's it for this week in science. For more information on courtship in the animal world, go to the RiAus website, riaus.org.au. Follow us on Twitter at RiAus and like us on Facebook. I'm Ben Lewis and we'll catch you next week.
Having a baby is a very special experience for any young parent. But imagine what it would be like to live with the fear that at any time that baby could become seriously ill and even die from a preventable disease. This was the everyday reality for our grandparents and the countless generations before them. The Vaccination Chronicles is a documentary film by Richard Saunders with stories from real people who know firsthand what it's like to see family members suffer from diseases we hardly hear about today. It's a powerful message for today's parents wondering about vaccinating their own children. The documentary is free to view and show in public without seeking permission. Just Google The Vaccination Chronicles for the YouTube link. You can also order the DVD of the documentary, autographed by Richard Saunders, for only $12. This covers production and postage to anywhere in the world. The DVD includes extra interviews, archival newspaper reports, and other features from the 1940s and 1950s. The artwork for the DVD and the cover are included on the DVD itself. Just visit www.skepticzone.tv to order your copy. Once you have the DVD, it's your job to copy it and pass it along to as many people as you wish. They, in turn, are encouraged to do the same. The Vaccination Chronicles, a must-see for all today's parents.
What we want is some more evidence, please. Here's Jo Alabaster.
Hello, this is Jo Alabaster. In the wake of the current US measles outbreak, which began at Disneyland in California and has so far resulted in 121 infections and thousands more people exposed across 17 states, public and media attention has been directed towards the issues of vaccination and the anti-vaccination movement. As we witness the very real effects of lowered herd immunity due to vaccine refusal, vocal support for vaccines has been prominent, as has criticism of anti-vaccination misinformation. In particular, public attention has again been drawn to Melanie's Marvellous Measles, a picture book which attempts to reassure children that it's a good thing to experience measles infection, written by Australian vaccination opponent Stephanie Messenger. The blurb on the back cover gives a good summary as to what the book is about. Quote, Melanie's Marvellous Measles was written to educate children on the benefits of having measles and how you can heal from them naturally and successfully. Often today we are being bombarded with messages from vested interests to fear all diseases in order for someone to sell some potion or vaccine, when in fact history shows that in industrialised countries these diseases are quite benign and, according to natural health sources, beneficial to the body. End quote. You know, this book is troubling on so many levels. When I decided to cover it in my report this week, I initially wondered whether I'd have to present you with 10 minutes of stunned silence. The story within follows Tina, who arrives at her first day back at school after the winter holidays to find that her friend Melanie is absent. Their teacher, heavily pregnant, advises the class that Melanie is at home with measles. Some children are concerned and worried about catching measles. Quote, Tina heard Jared tell Travis, the boy beside him, that he wouldn't get the measles because he had been vaccinated. Travis said that he wasn't vaccinated but didn't mind, until Jared then told him angrily, "Well, you're going to die if you don't get vaccinated." Travis thought about this for a minute and said to Jared, "Well, I know that isn't true because I haven't had any vaccinations and I am still alive." Jared didn't know what to say to that. End quote. And why should Jared? He's a kid, a fictional one at that. However, adults who write books for children, certainly should know better. Of course kids who aren't vaccinated aren't necessarily going to die. The nuances of risk are utterly lacking in this book. It's also a little heavy-handed in portraying a vaccinated kid in a negative manner. More on this later. Tina returns home after school and chats with her mother about Melanie, measles, and the other children's reactions. Tina's mother, who has not vaccinated Tina after attributing an illness Tina's older brother experienced to his vaccination, reassures Tina that the measles don't hurt. She tells Tina that children get spots on their body and can feel very hot for a day or so, and that for most children it's a good thing to get measles, as many wise people believe measles makes the body stronger and more mature for the future. Tina then asks her mother why the other children were scared. Her mother replies, quote, "They are scared because they don't know much about measles, and most people fear things they don't know anything about. It's a bit like being scared of the dark." End quote. Tina's mother then tells her about pox parties and natural lifelong immunity. Now, this has always puzzled me greatly. If measles and chickenpox are absolutely fine to experience, why on earth do some anti-vaccinationists declare immunity gained by experiencing an illness to be a good thing? It's bizarre. The story continues. Tina asks her mother if she can go and visit Melanie in the hopes of catching her measles. Her mother feels that this is a great idea and suggests bringing carrot juice and melon to help Melanie recover. Yep, they're having a pox party for two. Melanie greets Tina at the door and proudly shows off her spots, reassuring Tina that they don't itch or hurt at all. Melanie's mother is nonplussed at the efficacy of the measles vaccine Melanie received and mentions that Melanie has the worst case of measles the doctor had seen in years. Melanie's family doctor must be rather limited in his experience if an active and happy child with a rash is the worst case of measles he's seen in years. Common measles symptoms include fever, malaise, runny nose, dry cough, conjunctivitis and rash. And complications can include middle ear inflammation, diarrhea and vomiting, respiratory infections, pneumonia, miscarriage and premature labour in pregnant women, such as Tina and Melanie's teacher, encephalitis, which occurs in around 1 in 1,000 cases. 10 to 15% of people with encephalitis die, while 15 to 40% end up with degrees of permanent brain damage. There's one complication of measles that Melanie's family doctor wouldn't have been able to spot, though: subacute sclerosing panencephalitis, or SSPE. It's rare, affecting around 1 in 100,000 cases of measles, but nasty. SSPE is progressive inflammation of the brain that causes loss of personality and intellectual disability. SSPE usually begins around 7 years after measles infection. It's hard to fathom how anybody could be aware of these facts and still classify measles as a benign, short-lived children's illness, and one to actively seek out exposure to. Back to the book. Tina's mother talks about the ability of plenty of vitamin A to prevent measles and assist recovery from measles. The girls play with dolls, hug, and display wonderful manners. A week later, Melanie is back at school with no rash. Tina and her mother are incredibly disappointed that Tina hasn't contracted measles. Tina's mother attributes this to Tina's immune system being in good condition because she eats lots of raw fresh food, drinks plenty of water and plays outside. As much as it's feeling like shooting fish in a barrel to point out the inaccuracies in this book, I find the downplaying of how highly infectious measles is to be one of the most troubling elements in Melanie's marvellous Measles. Measles is airborne and lives a long time outside the human body. A person can become infected with measles by entering a room that somebody carrying it has been in 2 hours prior. It's estimated that 9 in 10 people without immunity who have contact with somebody who's carrying measles will contract it. Measles symptoms usually occur 10 to 12 days after infection. All of this means that measles can spread like wildfire, particularly in areas of low herd immunity. The book ends with the news that Jared, our vaccinated straw man, did get the measles. Tina attributes this to Jared eating so many sweets and chips and sanctimoniously wishes, "I hope that the measles make his body stronger and more mature and that he learns to eat more fresh foods so he can take better care of his body." The accompanying image is of an annoyed Jared lying in bed covered in spots with a hamburger, chips, labelled MSG enriched GM full, I kid you not, Cheezels, soda, cupcake and chocolate bar on his bedside table. The emphasis on nutrition is heavy here, as is the suggestion that good foods can prevent disease as effectively as we know vaccines can. Of course, good nutrition affects general health, but as my friend Alison so eloquently put it recently, diseases don't care if you've eaten kale or McDonald's. The last page features Tina beaming up at her mother, juice in hand, fruit beside her, and exclaiming, "Maybe I'll be lucky enough to catch measles next time someone we know has them." There's a dedication in the front of the book, which I'm thinking some of the book's intended audience, children from 4 to 10 years old, would read if they were reading independently. It states, quote, "Dedication. This book is dedicated to Jason, my firstborn son. In his short life, he taught me to be a more responsible parent, and with his death from vaccinations came my life purpose." End quote. Now, it seems that Stephanie Messenger has experienced terrible grief in her life, which has led her on the path she pursues. However, I question whether it's responsible to associate infant death with vaccination in a book for children. At all, but especially when the dangers of measles are downplayed so greatly. The risks of vaccination versus the diseases that they prevent are utterly skewed. If I were a kid who trusted this book and the adult who gave it to me, I'd be terrified of vaccines and fairly blasé about measles, which is perhaps the aim of this book, but goodness, I find it troubling. Kids trust their caregivers to provide them with accurate guidance in life, and this book does anything but. Mainstream media outlets, news websites and forums have been linking to Amazon's listing of Melanie's marvellous measles and the torrent of negative reviews which Amazon users have been leaving. Now, I don't know how many of these people who have reviewed the book have actually read it, or whether many are just responding to its very existence. Some of the reviews are rather poignant. Among the anger, frustration, mockery and black humour, there are some salient points which I feel bear repeating, such as this review from Seabisquick. Quote, "My infant daughter went blind after contracting measles from an unvaccinated child, and yet there's no Braille version of this wonderful book for me to give her someday to explain how awesome the disease that took away her sight is." End quote. Also this from someone identified as AD. Quote, "Wow, I'll have to buy this for my dad. He and my uncle had polio as toddlers and both were left with permanent disabilities. Now in their golden years, they get to suffer from post-polio syndrome as an added bonus. Preventable diseases truly are marvellous. Just ask my dad." End quote. A 5-star review from MJ Willow. Quote, "I'm so glad this book is out. Here I was thinking the 2 weeks of my childhood spent in a darkened room with blinding headaches and a burning fever were not fun. It was the early 60s and the measles were all the rage, but I was too young and ignorant to realise I was experiencing a miracle. This book has opened my eyes. I had to read it through some thick eyeglasses, though. They're almost as fun to wear as the little plastic sunglasses I had to keep on when I watched TV with my viral pals, the measles. To this day, the measles protect me from getting too much sun, as the sensitivity to light has never left me." Just to be a part of history and to have lived under a quarantine that stretched out to almost a month when my mother took ill with my marvellous measles is an honour I didn't recognise. Lucky for me, though, I had immunity to the disease. Good thing my mother wasn't pregnant then. At least I don't think she was. I have no siblings. I must apologise to my children for withholding such a glorious experience from them. Vaccines were available and free for the taking when they were young. I can't believe I fell for that. Hopefully they will forgive me for denying them this life-changing experience." End quote. And finally this, from user Tampa Girl. Quote, "What a dirtbag move to steal the title of author Roald Dahl's book George's Marvellous Medicine. Roald Dahl's daughter died of measles. This so-called author is just a leech on society, children, and the memory of Dahl's little girl." End quote. Indeed, the title Melanie's Marvellous Measles does bear resemblance to the title of Roald Dahl's book George's Marvellous Medicine. Which leads me back to the media coverage relating to the current US measles outbreak. Circulating widely at the moment is an open letter which Roald Dahl wrote to parents in 1988, in which he urges them to vaccinate their children and speaks about his own experience of losing his 7-year-old daughter Olivia to measles in 1962. It's a heartbreaking but important read and has been republished on many websites over the past few weeks. I'll put a link in the show notes to its publication on Snopes, which also includes Dahl's harrowing recollection of his daughter's last day and his wife Patricia Neal's perspective on losing Olivia and the effect it had on Roald Dahl. Now, so much of this is sad, that there's an outbreak of measles in a country where it was considered eradicated, that some parents need convincing in order to vaccinate their children, and that dangerous anti-vaccination misinformation, some directed at children, exists at all. Based on what I've been observing over the past month and a half since the US outbreak begun, though, more and more members of the public are standing up for vaccination and criticising misinformation, and the media are acknowledging this sentiment. While it's lousy that it's taken an outbreak to catalyse this wave of public support for vaccination, and the outbreak is unfortunately far from over, hopefully the pro-vaccination sentiment will strengthen as a result, and some parents who are complacent or on the fence regarding vaccinating their children may reconsider their positions. A transcript of this report will be available on my website, which can be found at evidenceplease.net.
The Skeptic Magazine, the journal from Australian skeptics. Subscribe online to the world's second oldest skeptical magazine. Visit www.skeptics.com.au and click the publications link. You can also find there over 30 years of back issues free to download. The Skeptic, the magazine from Australian skeptics.
Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone. Coming up next week, there's more from Heidi Robertson, the Raw Skeptic. Richard will be back in the captain's chair, and he'll be interviewing Ash Price from the Edinburgh Skeptics, who's taking his Edinburgh Fringe show, How to Talk to the Dead, on the road. Comedy, magic, and rational inquiry. It sounds very much like my cup of tea. For this week, this is Jo Alabaster signing off from the Blue Mountains, Australia.
You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for contacts, an archive of all episodes since 2008, and our online store. Please support the Skeptic Zone by following us on Twitter at Skeptic Zone, liking us on Facebook, and leaving a review on iTunes. You can also show your support by subscribing via PayPal for as little as 99 cents a week. The Skeptic Zone is an independent production. The views and opinions expressed on the Skeptic Zone are not necessarily those of Australian Skeptics Inc. or any other skeptical organisation.